Okay, hello my friend. Hopefully you are doing great. So in this tutorial, I'm going to tell you about the class members. So what's a class member? So from the name, you can see that the class member is something belongs to the class, not belong to instance. So what's the instance? You already knew, right? When I tell something like instance, that means you create a new object from a specific class, so we call it instance. So again, class members are something belongs to the class, not the instance. You can access the class members by using an instance, but it doesn't make any sense, and maybe there will throw some issue. So let's try to create a new bucket, and I can explain for you more by using code. So create a new bucket with the name lesson 15 here, and you create a new class with the name robot cats again. In this case, I want to declare two things: private ID and private name. And I'm gonna use the automatic calling generate supported from IDE to generate the getter and setter for those attribute. Enter, and I will generate the constructor as well. So generate constructors for all of the attribute, and I want to generate the default constructor as well. Generate constructor, select none. So that means I have default constructor here. So we have getter, setter, and constructors in this class. So let's declare something like class members. So a class member will be defined by a static keyword. Okay, so let's talk about the class variable first. So that means I will have private, static, and with the name is number of cats equals 0, and the type is integer. So that means when you see the keyword static, that is a class member, and in this case, that class member is a variable. So we call number of cats a class variable. Okay, so what is the difference between a class variable and an attribute in an object? So class variable will belong to a class, so that means it will be set between instances. That means all of the instance that created from the robot class will share this variable, you know. So how can we test that? Okay, so let's say I will have something like I just want to put the name here, not the ID. But in this case, I want to set ID equal, I will increase the number of cats, and then I will, try to reassign, should be integer. I will try to reassign that value to the ID. So I got a mistake, should be integer. Integer as well. Okay, so I will get something like ID. I will increase the number of cats here, and then I assign. So that means if I create a first broadcast instance, I will have ID 1, but from the second one, I will have the ID 2. Why? Because it is chain and it is shared between instances, right? So I can use this one. And for example, you have a factory and you want to create a lot of broadcasts, and the ID is unique. And by this way, you will have a unique ID, and you don't want to set manually, because when you set something manually, maybe there will be some duplicated. But because we are using a class variable and it is shared, so we can increase. So you can use something random, but in this context, I just want to have your attention that we can share this one. So how can test this out? So let's say we have a main method inside and the robot cat. Let's call it the cat1 equal new robot cat with the name mail1, okay, or cat1, okay. Then I will duplicate. I call it the cat2, and this is the name cat2. So I want to get the ID from those instance. So let me try to print out cat1.get ID and the cat2.get ID as well. And you run it, you will see the result. So you see cat1 will have the ID 1 and cat2 will have the ID 2. So you see we are sharing this variable between the instances, right? So for example, you do something like this, and you should be careful. You call robot cat dot number of cat now is 10. You run again. And you see this robot cat number and you increase to 10. It should be something static at the time, and you don't increase anything inside here. So that means when you use something like that, you cannot reassign this static class inside. So even you increase here and you want to get the ID, in this case, I am expecting to get should be I am expecting to get something like 11, right? Because I put as 10, so it should be the 11. But because you see the status is something like, it should be allocated at the very first time when you run your program. And when you see, when you create a new object, you put the ID back to the number of cat here. So that means you cannot change something like this. You cannot change something like this. Or you try to do something like, you can access a class variable by an instance, but its view doesn't make any sense because it belongs to a class, and when someone reads your code and they will get confused, this is a variable, instant variable, something like this. It doesn't make any sense, okay? So if you try to run again in this case, and you see the result, it should be 1 and 2 as well, because it will not change. This will not change, okay? But in case you have something ID equal number of cat here, and you run, all of them are 0. All of them are 0 here. Because we didn't do anything, we didn't increase anything, right? So let's say you try to put something here equal 10. Okay, and you run, you are expecting to get something like 10 and 10. So you see, when you put something like 10 here, it will change here. So you see the difference? If when you create some instances from the class, and you didn't do anything, and you try to change something here like broadcast, dot name here, and you want to change inside something, but because the case 2 is now already declared, so you expect something like 11 or 12, it doesn't correct. But if I move this line here off, let me try to copy this one. Case 2. Okay, so if you try to change this variable and you declare a new instance, in this case, let me put back something like increase, and you will see the difference. So now you see, it's now 11. Because when you access the class variable and you change, it will affect it for the new instance which is created from that class. So be careful. If you declare here, I already showed you a demonstration. If you declare here, so you get true, because when you try to change this one, it's not going to change anymore, because when you run the program, we already have this one. Okay, but when your program is running and then you change in the middle and then you create a new instance from that class, it will affect to the new instance. So you should be carefully when you use the class variable for something. That means when you understand, and then you can do something like change the value at the beginning here. So if you affect all the new things, but if you change something in the middle and then you continue to create a new instance, that will affect to the logic for the new instance. So be careful when using, okay? So that's it about the class variable, and you already knew how to change the variable, the class variable correctly. So let I explain for you a second class member. We call it a class method. So what's a class method? So you see getter or setter here, they are specific methods, and even you can create a normal method like run for a robot cat. Here, that's we already demonstrated in another lesson. But for example, if you have another class with the name here, for example, public status, integer get number of cat, okay, and this one because we have the static keyword here, so it's a class member, and in this case, because it's a function, so we call it a class function. So this one is instant functions because it will belong to the instant which will be created from class, but this one will be shared between the instances which is created from the same robot cat class here. So the same thing here. Okay, so if in this case you try to do something like this dot id agree, it will be invalid. It will be invalid because you are trying to use this. That means you are referring to an instance, but in this case we don't have any instance for a class variable. So when you try to access something like this, it will violation. Okay, something like violates the rule here, because static is something is not belong to the instance, it's belong to the class. Okay, so you just access the class variable. So if you want to do something like that, you can do number of cat increase. So that should be okay for you because you are accessing the class variable, not instant variable. So the first thing you need to remember, I remind again, in a class method, you just can access for class variable or all the methods. For example, you cannot use something like this dot access name is not correct. Okay, so you can access for something, for example, public static void another class method, and you call that method inside another class method. It's okay because you are accessing the class variable, class member, just like this one. Okay, so in this case, I will return number of cat here. Okay, number of cat here. So this is the method, class methods. Okay, and the static is something when you run the program, the class variable and class methods will be declared at the very beginning time by the static keyword, because it will be used, it will be shared among other instances. So that's why it's need to init at the beginning time of you run your application. Okay, so for example, you change your logic a little here. You have the name, and you can use something ID equal, if you call something like this, dot get number of cats here, you try to do something like this. It will be okay. You can still get the value that you want. But in this case, because it belongs to the class, so the correct way to call that is robot cat dot get number of cat will be missing. Okay, so you can do something like ID equal this one, and this is return. After you do something like this, you will try to, let me see, every time we call get number of cats, and I want to increase, okay, because every time we create a new instance and we call this one, and I want to increase, so the next instance created will have the new incremental number. So we can try to have something like, let me delete all the thing and try to run the program again here. So we probably see something like 1 and 2 again. You see 1 and 2, because when I create a new robot cat, I call the class method, and in this class method, it will increase and then it will return. So that means at the first time we will increase to 1, and then we return 1. And now the value will be 1 here. So another method, another instance created, if you call this, and then it will get the number 2. Okay, so it will get the number 2. So that's why we have 1, 2 here. But if you change something like, for example, let me see, in this case, you are going to change something in middle here, robot cat dot number of cat equal 10 now, and then you run again to see what's the difference. You see 11. So remember, when you change something in middle, when we just have something like a class variable, it will not affect anything, right? Let me remember this one, and oh yeah, the same thing. It will affect to the way you create a new instances inside because of this logic. Okay, so the same thing. So when you change something in the middle, it will change this class variable again, and then when you create a new instance, so in this case, it will get the new thing here. So for both of the class variable and class methods, when we access the class variable, and if you change, and because the variable is shared between the instances, so you need to be careful when using them. Okay, so for example, you want to say something like you have the number of cats at the ID, and then you can increase inside. And if you change something in middle, you need to pay attention if you attach to the new instances which is created from that class. So that's all about the class member. So let's summary. A class member is something belong to class. So that means you can directly access them by using the class name here. You don't need to access them from an instance. Even you can do that, but it doesn't make any sense when you use something like that. You will have the same value here, but when someone reads your code, they will get confused because they thought that this is from an instance variable, not class variable. So the best way that you call something like this. Okay, so and when you are using a class member, you need to pay attention because class member will be shared between the instances among that class. So when you change something, it will affect everywhere. After that value change, it will affect, from case 2, it's not 2, but will be 11 here. Okay, so just pay attention on the class member value and how can you change it. Okay, so try to practice yourself. I know you may get confused, but try to do something like class variable first, and then you try with the class methods later. Try to understand when you need to change it for some specific reason or something like that. You need to change it, okay? And then, okay, try to practice yourself. I think it's enough for this lesson, and see you in the next tutorial.